Welcome to 20th Century Geek. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to 20th Century Geek. So far this year, we have been talking about many geeky things. And last month, I got stuck into the whole comic book world, and we did villains. I talked all about the Joker and all other things. So we're going to move away from comics and other bits and pieces and return to something we haven't really talked about for quite a while, but it's still pretty close to my heart, having been a part of it for quite a while. And there's only one person who could walk us through this. I'm back with good friend, co-host Mike.
Hello.
You're back in the 20th Century
I'm
Towers.
Back in the room.
Yeah, you're back at 20th Century Towers.
Sat on a bed, wanting.
That's just the way you live in it.
Just
wanting.
I'm just on a bed.
In a constant state of desire.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good gimmick, that actually.
Yeah.
Comes to the ring with a
lovely
mattress on his back.
What a lovely transition that was then. Because we are talking about gimmicks and getting to the ring. We are going to be talking about wrestling.
We are.
Wrestling. But not just any wrestling. We're talking about specific wrestling. We're going to be talking about 80's wrestling.
Yeah.
The decade in which it really took off.
The birth of...
the modern era.
Modern era of wrestling, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely.
And thank God, Mean Gene, I got my pump back, man. You know, the pythons are ready. The largest arms in the world. I'm talking about all the way to the top, yeah. Unjustifiably in a position that I'd rather not be in. But the cream will rise to the top, oh yeah. My true madness, yes. As you realize, all that is left is total self-destruction. Do you, Hulk Hogan, show self-pity? Do you, Hulk Hogan?
Well, for me at least, that's when I really got exposed to it, and I think as many people, that's when you got the multimedia exposure to it. You first sort of
First WrestleMania.
Starrcade.
Yeah,
was the biggie.
Which was the rival in.
Yeah.
WCW brand.
That's it. Yeah, Jim Crockett Promotions.
The Starrcade was their WrestleMania, of course.
It took place first, didn't it? Starrcade.
Yeah.
Starrcade, I think, is 1983, and WrestleMania 1, 1985. So Vince clearly looked at the model and went, "I can do better than that."
Yeah, and he did.
And he did. Yeah. I mean, I remember from the 80s more than the wrestling. To be perfectly honest, I always remember action figures.
Yeah.
I had some of the early WWF action figures and the trading cards.
Yes, trading cards as well, of course. Yeah, I still got some.
You must have some.
Yeah,
I've
got some.
I'll tell you a story. Right, it's how important these trading cards were when I was a kid. I moved primary schools when I was young.
Sorry.
Just sorry. We've got. Is that who I think it is?
Yep.
Oh. I moved primary schools, and I remember when we moved, a friend of mine, he, everyone was getting sand. I was moving on, blah blah blah, and someone came to me, and as a parting gift, as a sort of a goodbye. I saw them again anyway, but they gave me a trading card of Big Boss Man and Ultimate Warrior out of their collection, which was a big deal when you were a kid.
Big Boss Man and Warrior.
Yeah, that was a big deal when you were a kid. I mean, they weren't shinies or anything. They weren't shinies.
No, you don't get they won't give away a shiny.
Don't give away a shiny card, fool.
But Warrior was the one where Warrior's like in an action shot on the ring.
No, it was a posed one.
Oh, it was the posed.
They were both posed, and it was a Boss Man. As you imagine,
So who is this? This is your gay friend from school?
No. This was primary school. That was our sexuality was clearly a big issue when I was like 8.
Yeah.
No, it was just a friend called Doug Jones actually who.
It was a teacher.
Yeah.
Who gave we asked Scott, have these 2 cards. Don't tell anyone.
I'll forever be your Big Boss Man. But that always exactly. It was like the gimmicks. It was. I don't know if it was and you probably know going back further than that, but it always felt to me like the birth of gimmicks, like ridiculous gimmicks.
Yeah, I mean, it became more of a show than a wrestling match. You know, if you go further back, you know, to the early 70s and 60s, you can see people batter the hell out of each other, you know, legitimately, you know, and lots of shoots going on between wrestlers.
Giving a good stretching in the ring.
Yeah, and then you go into the 80s, and then that's when the showmanship comes out a lot more. You know, that's when you got the characterization of the Grand Wizard and you know, and Boss Man and the Hogans of this world and stuff like that. So it is an important era, really, for the story of wrestling.
Oh yeah. It was. I always feel like the 80s, and especially the 80s and that, a little bit into the early 90s. Because let's be honest, wrestling always took a little bit of time to catch up to the rest of pop culture.
Yeah.
You know, like by the mid to late 80s, you know, the world was sort of like was moving in quite quickly, and then all of a sudden you get these big flamboyant wrestling gimmicks, and then you get sort of like the early to mid 90s is like grunge era. The rest of the world's grunge, and you've still got like really ridiculous gimmicks, still like flamboyant, brightly coloured gimmicks in the wrestling world, and then it changes to the Attitude Era, sort of like 95, 96, 97, and that catches up, and then you know so on. So they're always slightly lagging behind, I think.
Well, cable was also, you know, something that exposed it worldwide.
Yes,
because I mean,
Sky in this country, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, but prior to Sky, there was cable.
Yes,
you see,
true.
so we had cable TV before we had Sky TV. Sky TV came afterwards.
Yeah.
And cable TV was great because that exposed us to people like the WWE, you know, and WCW as well, of course.
Yeah.
But because up to this date, we were watching World of Sport on a Saturday morning.
Well, I was going to bring up World of Sport because you mentioned,
totally.
because you mentioned before about how you know you look back at the 60s and 70s wrestling and even early 80s wrestling when it was the territory system in the United States. It was very much that hard hitting. I mean, the gimmicks were few and far between.
Yeah.
It was more a case of, I mean, you get like Cowboy Bob Orton, but he was just Bob Orton and he wore a cowboy hat, and his gimmick was his broken arm. Even Rowdy Roddy Piper, like, you know, yeah, he played up a bit of a gimmick of being a Scots, you know, nutter.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like IRS kind of like, you know, Virgil kind of level gimmickry.
You mentioned people there like Cowboy Bob Orton and Rowdy Piper who were legitimately tough.
People. And
they grew up wrestling. You know, to them it wasn't a gimmick. It was.
Well, this is the world. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, you know, today they refer to it as sports entertainment, and it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. But I don't want to detract from anything that the guys do today. I mean, the schedule that these guys do and the matches these guys do is incredible. Oh yeah.
We know firsthand the physical toll it takes on your body and the mental toll it takes on you as well. You know, I mean, we at one stage did 6 shows in a week.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Our schedule was ridiculous stuff.
6 shows in a week, and I mean that was like nothing in comparison to some of the schedules that these guys.
Oh yeah, and these guys are traveling. We were doing it in close proximity, and these guys are like traveling and like family life, and it's. I mean, we weren't taking the bumps that some of these guys were taking, but the thing is, again, the difference being,
I don't think you ever bumped.
A few times.
You just fell over with style.
I did, yeah. Buzz Lightyear, this isn't flying, it's falling with style. No, but even so, like these guys in that, you know, let's call it pre-Wrestlemania or pre-WWF era, the territory era was very much like you went on the road. You know, and that sort of continued very much into the 80s and stuff. But there was that thing of like, if you were a wrestler, you wrestled. And the only way you got paid is if you stepped in that ring.
Yeah, totally.
And it wasn't going to be a huge amount. So, like, if you took the 70s, there's a great book, In the Pit with Piper.
Yes,
right? Roddy Piper. It's a
yeah.
fantastic book. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it, right? Because it covers like Piper getting into the industry.
Yeah, and Piper wrestling a bear.
It does.
Yeah,
it does.
He actually did
covers,
wrestle a bear.
It covers some of the craziest batshit stories like you will ever hear.
Yeah.
Him having to escape. Is it Rio?
Yeah.
You know, he was there with Flair and all this other stuff. Like, it was crazy. He tells a story of sort of like not Greg Valentine, another great one. Another big guy from the 70s and 60s. I can't remember the bloody name now. Getting pissed off after a show And so he just drove around the car park firing his shotgun out of his window.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, it just happened. You just you let them let off some steam, and then you got in the car with them and you travelled. But I remember in the book, like he says, you showed up, and these guys, these like veterans of years and years of matches and stuff, wouldn't think you were shit. Like you'd turn up and they're like, right, we are going to beat you, and we are going to break you, and if you keep coming back, you might get a match. And that's what it was like. That was in many of these stories. Is like you just kept like going and being beaten and stretched.
Pick up your $10.
Yeah.
And that's another thing is that you were in an era whereas you could wrestle in the main event and the champ will get $150 and you'd get 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was what it was like.
But there was also no consistency. I mean, that's the thing about the territory system is you could, if you were just you might be contracted later on, you might be contracted to a territory, say, right? So like Jim Crockett Promotions or even Vince's dad, Vince Senior.
Yeah.
You might be sort of contracted to one of those proper things, but you'll be going around. But if you were one of the younger guys, you might hop from promotion to promotion just to get work, and you'd be used as a jobber, which is you go in. You're beaten. You take the pin or the fall or whatever, and then you move on. You move on to the next show, and like you say, you might be getting paid like $10, $15, probably about that for a show. But like I say, like you probably weren't even using your name or your gimmick. You'd rock up, and they'd be like, "Right, you're this tonight. Go out."
Yeah, absolutely.
Tonight, you're so-and-so, you're a baddie, and out you go. You're a heel, go do your thing. Tonight, you're so-and-so, you're a face, go out, do your thing. And that was how they learn. That's how you get guys like Roddy Piper.
Yeah, totally. Learned on the job.
Yeah. But not just learnt on the job, but learnt through having to learn. Like they developed an ability, an astounding ability, through just like you say, just being pounded on. And I think that's why I always think it's fascinating when you do look at those early. I mean, what's your thought on like Let's talk pre-WrestleMania years. Those sort of what's it years? What are your thoughts on those?
Well, I mean, in this country, in the UK, I think that wrestling. The reason World of Sport died is because of the shake-up of the 80s and the way wrestling was presented. Because prior to WrestleMania, of course, Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks was selling out Wembley Arena.
Oh, they were big shit
for a less than 5 minute match for the main event. I mean, it was just
and it was awful. Like
terrible.
I went back and for this is one of the things I've been back and I've watched quite a bit of 80s and some late 70s wrestling.
Yeah.
Both WWF and some territory stuff, but also like World of Sport.
Yeah.
And I always had in my head, and this is just a nostalgia thing or just a memory thing, that World of Sport was quite good. I remember it from when I was a little kid. Like my granddad watched it. It was one of those things. It wasn't good. It was dreadful. And that wasn't the workers. The production values of some of these things were dreadful.
I remember going to see wrestling at Redcar Sports Centre dressed in white leather trousers and a white leather jacket, sitting on the front row. And then when it was shown on TV, there I was.
Sorry, you went as an extra from a Thriller video.
I went to a rock concert dressed like that as well. I felt like a right knob. Yeah. Well, there we go.
You probably look like a right knob.
I probably did, to be honest with you. Yeah, but I mean, the bouncer seemed to like me.
Yeah.
So
he bounced you on his knee.
He did. Yeah, and afterwards, after he bounced me on his knee, all right, and made me take off.
Is this going to go? No, I'm not going into the story.
Then he gave me a Big Boss Man card and an Ultimate Warrior card. So
said we'll always be friends.
Win-win.
Yeah.
And then the last words, I never forget his last words.
Brace yourself was his last words.
Yeah. This might sting a little. But the 80s, I mean, the World of Sport was fantastic. To me, the 80s, what symbolises wrestling to me in the 80s, my earliest memory is World of Sport. It's not outside of World of Sport.
No, I agree. World of Sport.
World of Sport was my religion on a Saturday, as it was for my mother, as it was for most people in the country that used to actually stop and watch wrestling, including the Queen Mother.
Yeah, she was a big fan.
Yeah, huge fan. She
was.
Yeah.
This is something that I think is forgotten, and we should do. I think we should do a lot more. I mean, in fact, we should do a proper show on World of Sport.
Yeah, get Keith in.
Oh, Keith Meyer. We know
very well.
We know Keith very well.
Can I just mention that I've pinned Keith Might. He's never pinned me. Just saying.
Yeah,
Right,
it was great when you could book shows, wasn't it?
There's no worry about that. Let's worry about who booked who.
It's not about who won. It's about how you play the game
No.
in a completely rigged event.
in a 2-year storyline.
Yeah.
So
But no, I agree. I mean, that would be fantastic. I would love to do. You start doing YouTube videos, and I think a YouTube video that focuses on World of Sport would be great because I think it's a forgotten, almost like an embarrassment of British culture.
I don't see why, because it was such an integral part.
It was.
The British wrestling scene exists today, and the British
And he's on a resurgence.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that there's I haven't looked at it yet, but a good friend of the show, Nick Bray, actually sent me a link to an item. It's called The Resurgence of British Wrestling. And I agree. I think it's really coming back strong. WWE is taking an interest in it.
Yeah.
Both you and I know, we don't really know him now, but we have known the current champion, Pete Dunne, very well in the past.
Yeah.
We've both worked with him extensively. And some of those guys are awesome.
And
like,
Finn Balor.
Yeah,
Balor. We've both wrestled Finn.
But both these guys...
Sheamus.
Yeah. I never wrestled Sheamus, but I met him and stuff back in the day.
Page.
But, yeah. Yes, exactly.
Page,
we knew Page.
know.
But this is the thing, like, these are guys that have, like, you and I, basically, and I'll be perfectly honest, right? We've gone our paths, we've done different things. Wrestling was never going to be in our destiny, because I'm a flabby mess, and, you know, you're a broken mess. But these are guys, But these guys, I'm so proud of them. When you look at, like, they're being they are representing the British wrestling scene as it is today, and it is fantastically strong. And I hope it goes to strength to strength. And I would love to see a return of a form of World of Sport in Britain today.
See, I don't agree with you, because I wouldn't want to see World of Sport back, because World of Sport is...
I say a form of World of Sport. It doesn't have to be World of Sport.
But they've tried it. They've tried the revival of World of Sport, didn't they? Do like a one-off special World of Sport.
They did.
And when you're watching it, you kind of go, this isn't World of Sport. World of Sport wasn't this. This is not what it is.
No.
This is a UK version of people trying to be WWE.
Yes.
World of Sport needs to be World
British.
of Sport.
Well, this is the thing. So let's actually identify something, because there's several key things that differentiate British professional wrestling from American professional wrestling. So when you think of professional wrestling, especially today, you think of, you know, they come to the ring with a huge pomp and pageantry, probably fireworks and the Titantron and the music and all that kind of stuff. And they come to the ring, do some move or some sort of, like, you know, flex or blow water or whatever they do, right? And then they have a match, probably lasts between 6 and 12 minutes, about standard, I'd say. And then someone wins and they go. Or it's part of a storyline and there's an intervention, or it goes to a default or DQ. Or, do you know, there's always something, right? That's American professional wrestling. British professional wrestling. How would you describe it? I've just described American professional wrestling. How would you describe real British professional wrestling? Take me through a match.
Well, British wrestling is very different, because the rules are very gentlemanly.
And explain that, because I don't think people know this.
Most matches were done 2 out of 3 falls.
Yeah.
1 knockout or 1 submission to
Yeah.
determine the winner. And if you got knocked out of the ring and counted out, that's a disqualification.
That's it. You're out.
You're out, and that's the end of the match. It's counted as a. I think it's counted as a knockout, isn't it?
It's a loss. Yeah. If you were counted out, so titles.
Yeah, it's a KO. That's a knockout. Yeah.
But also, there were rounds.
And your rounds, yeah. 2-minute rounds, 5-minute rounds, and public warnings.
Yeah.
You know, John Balls received his first public warning.
Yeah.
That's probably for you punching someone in the back of the head. That's what I imagine that's for.
Yeah.
Never until
in
the
the
day
crowd.
I die.
That's never going to be let go. But that's actually, and this was the difference. So now you have this thing of, if you watch a match today, and I don't really watch WWE at the moment, so I'm unrelated. But if you are to watch a modern professional wrestling match, you will see the heel, and they will distract the referee. They'll do something, and then they'll do something. Then they'll do something heinous to the other guy, right?
Yeah.
But then if the referee sees it, they get a telling off.
Yeah.
Whoa, you've been a bad boy, and it's you know, you don't hear the microphone.
It's a work, isn't it?
It's a work. It's all part of the work, and but so is British. But the difference being, you could use that in the British thing as a part of the storyline. You could get, was it 3 public warnings?
3 public warnings.
3 public warnings. So it could be that was worked into a match. Whereas a heel, you'd be like, oh well.
3 public warnings, you're disqualified.
Yeah, but then as a heel, that you be like, well, part of my strategy is I will use 2 of those public warnings to my advantage.
Oh, they did,
and they would.
Jackie Pallo, Kendo, stuff like that.
Exactly.
Totally, yeah. I mean,
and it was a great thing where as a heel,
haystacks.
Yeah, as a heel, you'd go out and you'd be like, no, blatantly, I'm going to do thumb to the eye, or I'm going to rape the guy's face, or I'm going to do step on the guy's hand or something. And you go, I'm accepting that public warning because I'm a baddie.
And also in British wrestling, you weren't allowed to go to the top rope.
Yes.
Get that as well, yeah.
But and that's what. So you're right. So in the 80s, British wrestling was not. I mean, if it would be amazing to see, right? If you play a Saturday night main event, right? WWF Saturday night main event. Take any match in one of those. And let's say let's take like a main event, right? And a main event from any Saturday night main event, WWF showing, and then a main event from a World of Sport from the same era.
Wembley.
Yeah, a World of Sport, just play them back to back.
Yeah.
They are worlds apart.
Yeah, they are.
Worlds
but
apart.
also as well as that, British wrestling was terribly gentlemanly.
It was.
It's gentleman rules.
Yeah.
And it was all about fair play.
Yeah.
Even though there was the characterizations, there was people like Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy coming out. We shall not be. And they did have flamboyant extras. Adrian Street, they had a flamboyant entrance. There, so they are. The entrances are there. The characters are there. It was a very British.
Well, I
WWE.
think, but when you look at World of Sport, you really see that. I think there are stronger, what I would call gimmicks in World of Sport than there were in the British scene. So when you look at Big Boss Man it was really sort of mid to late 80s.
Yeah.
Those early 80s was you have Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Randy Savage, Hogan, Roddy Piper,
Andre the Giant.
Andre the Giant, but Andre the Giant wasn't a gimmick. He was just a big bloke.
But Giant Haystacks wasn't really.
Yeah, but then think about Kendo Nagasaki. Like, he had a whole gimmick about being this mysterious Eastern wrestler, and he wore a mask. I know the end of this. He wore a mask, and it was never revealed for years. He was never ever revealed.
Yeah.
But that's an entire gimmick.
Yeah, he lived it as well.
He lived it. Yeah, backstage, if there were people around, like the mask was on and the gimmick was on. Kayfabe was strong.
Oh yeah, totally.
All right. I don't think that level of gimmickry was really employed in the big part in the US. There's probably little bits and pieces, but mostly it was.
So have to do it. The Kendo
story.
Kendo podcast. Imagine getting Kendo on you. That'd be brilliant.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's still alive. He runs a care home.
Is he?
Yeah.
I suppose he's not in the care home.
Well,
should we give the spoiler away though for the Kendo story? We hold it for another day. Well, you tell them. Give them the spoiler. The end of the Kendo Nagasaki story. What is it?
Oh no, let's not destroy the illusion.
No.
Let's leave it as a word.
Because Kendo Nagasaki scared the crap out of me as a kid.
Oh, we had him at training.
You did. Long time ago.
Yeah.
But he scared the crap out of me as a kid.
Yeah.
That character, that gimmick.
Oh, it was great.
Worked for me.
And he got unmasked so many times.
Mm.
The unmasking of Kendo Nagasaki happened loads of times. Mainly against Big Daddy, by the way.
Yeah.
Big Daddy normally beat him and he had his mask taken off.
But yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Like British wrestling. When people think of British wrestling now, like I think because of budgets and it's faster paced, it's more colourful, it's louder. American wrestling is now the standard.
Yeah.
Do you think though that there is a place still for British world sport style wrestling?
Yeah, because British wrestling has evolved. Okay, so there is still a place for British wrestling.
No, I'm talking
you take British wrestling the way it is now with the flamboyancy and mix it up with World of Sport. I think that possibly it might work. However, it won't commercially. It won't work. It'll work for a little while, but it's just people are used to people are inundated and drown with the format that's TNA, WCW, WWF, etc. So I don't think it would work today per se. I think it would work for me today. I'd love to see it again, and I think that there's lots of people out there who will see it, but they're a dying breed. People of a certain age.
I suppose you're right. If you were to play it today, if you were to do an entire show on the ITV World of Sport, and you did it probably like better production values, but you kept those rules. Like people would switch off.
People just go, "What the fuck's this?"
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What rounds? What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, the only round thing in that ring is him.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's a shame, but what makes World of Sport is World of Sport. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
World of Sport was a time in history.
Yes.
It's not something that can be replicated. You can't. It's like 80's comedies.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And 1970s comedies. You can't do that.
You couldn't you couldn't do an Alf Garnett thing today.
No, you
and
can't.
It wouldn't work.
Not only because of the political side of thing, but just because
The jokes don't work.
we've moved on
Yeah.
from in the world of comedy.
Yeah,
We are in a different place of what we find
Funny.
Our funny enough, even though with political correctness, our boundaries of comedy have got wider, and so it wouldn't work. And that's the thing about wrestling, is that you are putting people through tables and ladders and stuff, and this is on family entertainment shows.
Yeah, but more than that as well, like the guys are just, and let's be fair, right? The wrestlers of many levels today are so much more athletically capable than some of the guys that were in World of Sport. And we've talked about Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy.
Yeah.
Those guys, and people say that Hogan had a limited moveset. Like, Haystacks and Big Daddy just had a limited set. Like, those guys barely moved.
Haystacks, funny enough, that's I've got to disagree with you on something there. Haystacks was very, very gifted when it came to wrestling. His size was his problem, is that he was only limited to what he could do, but he was really talented with,
but he couldn't do it because of his size. I mean, he got to like 32 stone at his biggest, and
I worked with him, at shows and stuff, and he was just larger than life, an amazing man, and a really kind man as well, and that's the difference as well. Like, we'll go into that in a sec, but his moveset was great because he couldn't really do, sort of like a lot of grounded work, or high flying or anything like that. He had to stop people in their tracks.
Yeah.
But then it's about selling the gimmick as well. Is that if you're a big man like Giant Haystacks, you don't have to do a lot.
No, that's true.
Because to sell the magic, you don't sell. Very little. Sell very little. Look at Big Show.
Yeah.
Big Show doesn't really sell that much. Look at Brock Lesnar.
Oh yeah, no, again, if you are of that character, that's what you are selling. If that's your gimmick,
but he was very aware, more aware than Daddy. Daddy's moveset was awful.
I always put, like, the thing is, and I would lump Big Daddy, Shirley Crabtree, I would lump him in almost in a similar bucket with Hulk Hogan in many ways.
That's a big bucket.
That was a strong bucket. But not in the respect of athleticism or anything, because Hogan, he had the body, he had the physique, and he had more. I'd say he had. I would say more charisma, because Big Daddy had the charisma. Like, he could work a crowd. But even with Hogan's limited set, he still did stuff. But they both had an arrogance about where they existed. In the scheme of things, mainly because I think a lot of people kept telling them, "You are the shit, and you are amazing, and you are the thing that keeps us going." Blah blah, and they believed it.
Mainly his brother, with Daddy's concerned.
Yeah.
Max Crabtree, who was the promoter.
I was going to say he was the promoter, wasn't he?
Yeah. So he puts his brother as didn't put him as champ, but he put him as
the big deal,
the main event. It's the biggest draw. Keep it in the family, make money, or what makes money. And the thing about Daddy is, I liked Big Daddy, and I liked the Big Daddy gimmick. I liked everything about it until I met him. And then when I met him, that's when everything went out the window.
I never, for all the things, when I was really involved in the whole the wrestling world and stuff, and you'd sort of like meet people like Keith or others, like the Bulldogs that have met him and stuff. The UKPs. I never heard a good word about him.
Yeah, I mean, he was awful. I mean, I remember meeting him at Reddy Car, and I was a little bit in awe. I never worked any show with Big Daddy, by the way. I worked shows with Haystacks, but never with Big Daddy. And I remember Big Daddy when we was doing a show, when there was a show in Reddy Car, and I was I was queuing for an autograph, because he was like growing up, my idol. And then this kid came up to him, and Big Daddy had his big bingo wings.
He did.
Big bingo wings. and the kid came up and he was pushing
Oh,
his bingo wings like that with his finger because he found it fascinating. The kid was only small, probably 5, 6, something like that. And Big Daddy turned around to the guy with the bingo wings and said, "Fuck off." Right?
Yeah.
And then the kid went off, and he wouldn't sign his autograph, and he signed my autograph. And then there was another kid that was behind me and had a piece of paper, a bus ticket. So I gave him one of my pictures and said, "Look, you have one of my pictures because you can't have a bus ticket." And then Big Daddy shook my hand and said, "You're a very kind man. You're a very kind man." And then so
punched the kid in the face.
Thank you very much. I said, and I went and sat down and shook my hand, and I appreciated that, but I didn't appreciate what he said to the kid, and that's kind of stuck with me. I thought, I wish you hadn't done that. It kind of spoilt my opinion of you. And then, of course, working with people like Haystacks, working with people like Keith, and as you say, UKPs and Ricky and stuff.
Klondike
like that, Klondike. None of these people have. All people I respect in the business. None of them had a good word to say about Big Daddy at all. No. It was just shocking.
I mean, another book. In fact, while you were saying that, you say about that story. Another book I would highly, highly recommend if you want to know something about the British circuit in the sort of 70s, 80s, and that sort of time is
The Wrestler.
No, is Walking the Golden Mile by
yes, by
Regal.
Steve Regal.
Steve Regal.
Great book.
It's an amazing book. I met the guy. I met Steve Regal was at the one of the BBC Birmingham cons, and I had his book, and I was just like, I can sign here,
Are you going to sign William Regal book?
Yeah, some attic somewhere. Yeah.
Bastard. Bastard.
Yeah, and I said to him, I said, "Oh yeah, it was really early on when I was starting." Oh no, I might have been wrestling for a while actually, and I just said to him, I said, "Oh yeah, I work a promotion, nearby," and he just said to me, he was just a lovely bloke. He was just like, "Oh, that's fascinating. It's good to see that there are good people still in the British scene," and he was just like, "Yeah, thanks." It was just a genuinely nice bloke.
He said same to me. Exactly.
Oh yeah, the same, I'm sure he did. I'm sure
and
it was
to the guy in front.
Yeah, but I'm sure it was his go-to thing. But you could tell he was there in the moment where he was like, "These guys warrant it." Like,
whereas Mick Foley, when I met Mick Foley, he said to me, he didn't say to me,
"What the hell are you?"
He just said security. That's what he said. Genuinely did say that as well.
He looked at you and and was like, "There's a bloody warrant against you, restraining order."
He said to me, "I can't remember wearing a boiler suit." No, not you, I'm me.
He looked at you and he said, "Mike, I've warned you. You're within 50 feet. Back off."
I've met him many times since then. He still looks a bit worried every time he talks to me.
I'm sure he does, because you're rustling around in your trousers when you see him.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the 80s. Let's go to the American scene there, right?
Okay.
Because that's really the bigger thing.
Mm.
And I'm going to do a bit of a thing. I'm going to do an article on WrestleMania, so I'm not going to go into that too much. But what we should highlight is for all the things we talk about, for all the gumph Vince gets today, and always got about being, he's doing this backstage and blah, 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 blah. It cannot be understated how hard he worked and how much he put into making wrestling what it is today.
Yeah,
especially in that early period.
A visionary. He took it to the next level.
He did. He was the man. He was the Steve Jobs of the wrestling world.
Absolutely, 100%. Great analogy of that. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because if it wasn't for him, I think that because you had like Jim Crockett Promotions and other territories, but it was a territory promotion. He was the first one that was like, no, I know how to go national, and here's how we're going to do it.
Ball size of grapefruit. He invested everything he possibly could. I mean, he was borrowing money left, right, and centre so he could put on WrestleMania.
I didn't realise this until doing some of this research. Now, WrestleMania, if it hadn't have worked, would have bankrupted him like 4 or 5 times over. Yeah. Like he had everything in on that.
Yeah.
And it paid off. Like big time.
You mean that the billionaire known as Vince McMahon looks back at that and goes, "Oh, I'm glad he did that."
I'm glad that because he would not be the billionaire or even millionaire.
Yeah, I often
Vince McMahon.
I wonder what Triple H sees in billionaire daughter.
Yeah, but let's be careful with this, right? Because let's be honest.
I love
Paul
McMahon.
Paul Levesque is independently wealthy for all he's incredibly rich, and for all that stuff that Vince gave him. Let's be honest. But I do stress. You're right. There was a huge rivalry between those territories. all over the country. And you hear about big ones, Texas, territories, and the Florida territories, and like Vince had the North, like the New York, New York sort of territories. And that was it. Like, that was your. You worked there, and then
because it was the etiquette. That's the way it worked.
Yeah, that was what it worked. And granted, like he pissed people off.
Oh yeah.
By doing what he did.
But it was Vince Senior, wasn't it? Wasn't it Vince Senior that broke the agreement, or was it Vince?
No, it was Junior.
It was Vince Junior.
It was Vince Junior.
Ah.
Vince Senior was Vince Senior tried every now and then. He would do little bits. They had the same attitude from what I've read, but it was Vince Junior. It was Vinnie Mac, as we know, that pushed it and was like, "Fuck it, this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to work, and this is what I'm going to do." And built WWF.
Yeah,
and
his father wasn't too happy with him buying into territories, was he?
Well, I didn't know this, but it was actually his father wasn't just unhappy about that, because Vince Junior bought out from under, literally bought it out from under him, Vince Senior. He came in and was like, yeah, woomph, like, hey, Daddy, look over there, boing, and took, because as it was then, the WWF from under him, streamlined it, and then was like, right, we're going national, and this is how we're going to do it. He had a strategy, and he had
Worldwide Wrestling Federation.
Yeah, and I don't think he gets all the flack today, but it can never be, he should never be forgotten how much he contributed to making wrestling what it is today.
No, absolutely, 100%. I totally agree. And I mean, the birth of that. I remember WrestleMania 1, and I remember helping a friend across the road from me, helping his dad with stripping wallpaper off the walls, and he said, "Oh well, thanks for doing that." He goes, "I tell you what, tonight there's something on called Wrestlemania. Would you like to watch it?" And I said, "I have to go and ask my mum." So I went and asked my mum. She was drunk, so it didn't matter. And then I went across and watched it, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. I was like, "Oh my god!" And that was my first exposure to WWF. That was first ever exposure.
And that's, I think, one of those things, isn't it? That no one really, in this country, especially in America, it's a different thing. I think in America, because I've had American friends, and when I've spoken to them, they're very much like, if they're slightly older than me or whatever, they were.
Or they're watching Sex and the City.
Yeah. But they would have already watched it. They would have had some exposure, usually from the territory system.
Yeah.
But they would have already. Oh yeah, we knew about this thing. The WWF, or we heard about these things, and we heard about Starrcade in 1983. I hadn't. It was WrestleMania, and I think the first one I saw was WrestleMania 3. And that's, to me, was my first exposure. When all of a sudden,
great! That's great exposure.
Oh, it was blew my mind.
Wonderful exposure. Great card.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll get into. I've got a list here of some matches I think that, to me, defined that era for me. But it's that thing of it was just different. It was so different. So in fact, let's talk about the Americans in the WWF then. So who for you defines 80s wrestling then?
Warrior, Hogan.
Those are the two.
Well, I mean, if I had to think of Warrior, Hogan, Roddy Piper, Savage, Bossman, totally Bossman. Because Bossman was a major heel.
Awesome, love
major
Bossman.
heel.
Yeah.
I
think Bossman was probably one of the influences on me as for the John Ball character, really.
Oh yeah, totally. Ray Taylor was such a nice man, such a lovely man, and also great gimmick.
Yeah. But a proper gimmick. Like he was a Georgia prison guard.
Yeah, he was.
There was no messing. Oh no, he's a Georgia prison guard, and he wears a prison guard uniform to wrestle in. And with a nightstick. Loved it. Loved that gimmick.
Other ones, that I think of when I think of 80s wrestling, Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yeah. We'll talk about Jake in a minute, actually.
$1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase.
Loved $1 Million Man.
The 7 I mentioned there. They're the 7 I think.
There's someone you have mentioned, which I do think about. That's Ricky Steamboat.
Oh, yeah. I should have mentioned Ricky Steamboat. My God, one of the greatest wrestlers that's ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
And I agree. All those names you've mentioned.
I don't think of Hitman Hart or anything like that. I think he's more 90s. Class him as 90s. Even though the Hart Foundation.
It's late 80s, but it didn't become a thing until the 90s for me.
Yeah, 90s is Shawn Michaels. Hitman Hart.
I mean, because if you say the 80s, the Rockers were what 88, 89.
Yeah.
But still, they didn't take off till the early 90s.
Yeah, they never really took off, did they?
It was the Rockers.
Yeah, just
They were very low.
They were floated, yeah, mid card at best. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, Michaels on his own was able to go and make it big. So, those guys you've mentioned there, really are like the defining. They're the top tier, aren't they?
Yeah,
I mean, Hogan to me is the poster boy for 80s wrestling.
Yeah, totally.
And then he's the top of the tree, and regardless of I know he gets a lot of flack, but then you've got like Warrior, Savage, for Roddy Piper,
top heel in the business in the 80s was $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase.
Yeah,
100%.
The best thing.
Obviously, I did mention Andre. I do apologise. Andre
the Giant.
But I get a bit sad talking about Andre the Giant. But I mean,
but to me, you talk about like Ted DiBiase, and there's the things he also do. Like he would call kids into the ring and be like, "All right, kid, here's $1,000 if you can do this thing, whatever." And the favourite one,
bounce the ball,
bounce the basketball 10 times, and then stick his foot under it and be like, "Oh, you failed. Get out."
One of the greatest books. He made a film recently. It came out last year, which is all about him and his truth of his life and stuff like that. And because he's a minister now, of course.
Yes,
And but his books are so truthful, And there's this guy that lived this gimmick, the $1 Million Man gimmick, was penniless. He hadn't got a pot to piss in, So it was just like,
well, none of them did. That's
complete opposite to what he was,
That's the thing, though. I think that there were these top guys. I mean, I would never say $1 Million Man was a gimmick to me that I always loved, and I was big fan of it.
Yeah.
But it was never like top tier. He was never Hogan to me. Do you know what I mean?
But there wasn't anyone though. There wasn't anyone.
But that's what I'm saying. But like, it was only you had to be in that top level, that the top couple of tiers to really make some money.
Oh, Russian Recruit. It's never.
Oh, Russian Recruit. Jeez, obviously. And just, let's talk about Hogan, right?
Okay.
For a little bit. And he's, to me, Hogan is two people. And I'll start with yours. So I've talked a lot. What do you think of Hogan?
Personally, or professionally?
No, just as talk about Hulk Hogan in the sense of 80s wrestling. What does it mean to you?
I think he was an icon, and I think that he was a driving force of an era that needed a character like Hogan. He was a superhero. That's what he was. He was a superhero of wrestling. No one could beat Hogan. And
but why? What was it that made him that? To you?
Because he was, no matter what you did, he hulked up. You could beat the shit out. You could hit him with a car, and then just as you think he's down and he's done, he hulks up. And when he hulks up, that's it. The game over. And they run with that gimmick. They run with that gimmick right up to WrestleMania 6. It was the only time he hulked up, and someone got the better of him.
That was
Warrior.
Yes.
That was. Get out.
But
the greatest match it ever was.
We'll go on to the matches in a minute. But watching some of this stuff, one of the things I was interested to watch was nowadays it's very clean cut between a face and a heel. There's always that grey area in the middle, like for some characters, but you get like John Cena, clean face, right? I don't know any heels. Randy Orton, when he's a heel, he can be a really good heel, right?
I don't think John Cena's a good example because half the audience boo him, half the people.
No, but I'm talking about moveset and activity.
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
okay,
ring,
yeah,
right?
fine, yeah.
You can define them. You could watch that and go, goody, baddie, right?
Yeah.
Quite easily.
Yeah.
Watching Hogan I was watching like lead up to WrestleMania 1, right? So I was watching all these matches and stuff, right? And things like the Paul Orndorff betrayal and all this other stuff, right? And all the things that kept jumping out to me was like, why is Hogan doing something like thumb to the eye, raking of the face, like doing stuff that I'm like,
oh, he's doing heel moves.
He's doing heel moves, totally. And people are cheering him for it.
And rake down the back.
Yeah, proper heel moves. And I'm thinking, that's interesting that it worked.
Yeah.
But he would still then get beaten up.
But everyone could forgive him because he's Hogan.
Yeah, exactly. It was an odd
It's all right because it's Hogan.
But it was almost that thing of like, which came first? Did he do all this stuff before and I just didn't notice it, or is it he became Hulk Hogan, the icon, and he could get away with it?
Well, I mean, he was a heel, don't forget, prior to being Hulk
Terry,
Hogan. Yeah,
I never pronounce his last name.
Bolello.
Yeah, but
or Bowler, whatever.
Bowler, yeah.
Bolello,
But he was a
yeah.
heel, wasn't he, for a long time when he wore the blue trunks.
Oh, and the white trunks as well when he was
Yeah.
in Japan. You know, I mean, he was a heel. I mean, Andre was a face.
Mm.
You know, Andre was a face for years. The only reason Andre turned heel is to go against Hogan.
Yeah, and that's it. So watching those sort of matches, I mean, the thing I really enjoy is, aside from the wrestling, I always love the promos and the sort of the what I call the gimmick work, like the build up.
Yeah.
Right? I love that shit, the behind the scenes stuff. So building up to WrestleMania 1, watching Hogan and Mr. T doing stuff together. Is in like there's some gimmick. It was such
a rip of Rocky, wasn't it?
It's amazing. It's an amazing thing. Because there are scenes.
You do me.
Yeah. There's a whole scene where they go into a health food store and they're going, I have some of this. Oh, I love this, brother. Raisins are good for you. Oh yeah, man, we'll get some raisins. And it's just this sort of like whole thing about them grabbing random health foods. But what I didn't realize
they all went to McDonald's, had a Big Mac afterwards. You know what I mean?
But what I didn't realize is, like, that was never. In this day and age, right, you'd have like, all right, we're going to contact the food store, we're going to tell them who's going to turn up, we'll block off the thing.
Yeah.
No, this was like they were literally like, oh, this is a good idea. Right, let's go do it, and they would just turn up at shops and start filming. You can watch. There's people in the background like, what the fuck is going on? Why are Mr. T and Hulk Hogan in the shop? Like, people didn't approach them because they were being manic. Like, they're literally like throwing like raisins and banana chips and like other stuff like whey protein shit in this basket. And just drinking milk. At one point, they crack a milk open, like, rah! And I'm just like, this is mental. But it's no wonder people were hyped for this because this had never been on television before.
Yeah, totally.
Like, it was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
In that sort of promotional way. Because I didn't realise as well, they appeared on Saturday Night Live to promote WrestleMania 13 hours before the show.
And wasn't that the one where Roddy Piper appeared on as well?
Roddy had a spot, yeah. But they do the monologue, they're the guest host, they do all the stuff. And then, like, literally, like 12 hours later, they've got to be on. They're on in ring, ready to go. It's I love it.
Is Roddy Piper's story about WrestleMania when he says, you know, that we were brought there in limousines, and then at the end of the night, they left the dressing room, went outside, and there was no one. There's nothing. Yeah. No limousine, just stuck there on the sidewalk. Yeah. Hogan and Mr. D had gone off in a limousine to the party.
Well, Hogan. We will cover it now because the thing is, like. It's famously known that Roddy did not like Mr. T being brought in. Not just didn't like Mr. T, he did not like him being brought in. He was like, he's an actor. This is a complete stab at what we do. I don't like it. I'm not happy with it.
Yeah.
And then so when Mr. T actually got cold feet and didn't turn up, Piper was like, I'm completely vindicated. Like, I was completely right. This guy's a complete prat and he should not be in the ring.
It was 11th hour, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it was Hogan that actually had to go down and get him. Like, he turned up, but he wouldn't leave the car in the car park. And Hogan, in full kit, had to go down and get him like an hour before the match. So Mania's on, and he's like, right, you've got to come up and do this. And he talked him into it, and they had to get like Mr. T's entire entourage upstairs and all this other shit.
Yeah, he was a bit of a diva, wasn't he?
Oh, he was a prick. Apparently, he was a real prick. But it was Vince. This is the story. Apparently, Vince went to Hogan and said, like, and he confessed, like, I've got everything's on the line for this. If Mr. T does not walk out there, we're screwed. Like, this is on you.
Yeah, we've built all this up.
Yeah, Hulkster, this is on you. You've got to get him in the ring.
Yeah.
And you have to go down and persuade him. So, it's one of those things that, like, you know, when you watch WrestleMania 1, it's dated, but it works. As an event, you've got Cyndi Lauper, you've got Muhammad Ali, you've got all these things going on. Liberace. I mean, it's an amazing...
Oh, it's great. It's very spectacle.
It's a great spectacle. But when you hear about the stuff that was going on backstage, it's nuts.
Yeah, you think about the fact that Vince McMahon probably thought this was it. We'll just do this. If I'm going out, I'm going out with style.
This was it.
Cyndi Lauper,
yeah.
Man, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to know about that thing. And I really do think, I mean, the WrestleMania... Let's just quickly do the matches then, all right? We'll get round to a few things, but let's talk about... and we'll come back, because we've got to come back and talk about in another show. For the next show, we'll talk about 80's more. But
okay, cool, yeah.
I've got 4 matches, and I'm going to throw them out and I think these, to me, have got real importance. So I've got WrestleMania main event: Hulk Hogan and Mr. T versus Roddy Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful. To me, is a defining milestone in wrestling entertainment.
Yeah, not necessarily a good match though.
Oh no, terrible match.
But
Awful
it
in
was
many places.
yeah. You're right. It's the keystone that holds everything else together.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a main event that paid off to what it was.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, seeing Mr. T in the wrestling ring, well, that's pretty cool.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And that's what it was. It widens that media appeal.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so
gimmick.
important. And another one we didn't mention from the 80s: Superfly Jimmy Snuka
Yeah.
versus is it Don
Morocco.
Don Morocco?
Yeah.
In the steel.
Dan Morocco.
Dan's
his
brother.
gardener.
Yeah.
Dan, you missed the roses, Dan.
You missed a spot. Don Morocco in the steel cage at Madison Square Garden. Now I'm going to hold this up for two reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, Snuka did things, but coming off the top of a steel cage in that time,
15 foot down.
Yeah,
And it was legitimately 15.
Oh
foot.
yeah, it was. And it's a proper steel cage.
Oh yeah.
In the 80s, was almost like a no-no.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean,
So for him to do it was incredible.
And for Don Morocco to take it.
And that's the thing I was going to say. So for Morocco to agree to take it, so that's why I think that match is, because it sets a standard of like, oh, you can do this crazy shit, and it can be done well.
Do you know why I like that match?
There's another reason why I say that match stands out.
Yeah.
Who was in the audience?
Mick Foley.
Mick Foley was in the audience.
And that's the match that made him decide
It
to
is.
become a professional wrestler. God bless you, Superfly.
And that's why
Jimmy
I think
Snuka.
it's such an important match for many reasons.
Oh, God rest you, Superfly.
I'm also thinking of so let's the next one. WrestleMania 3. So this is one that really got me interested in wrestling.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 3.
Yeah.
Macho Man Randy Savage versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
One of the greatest matches it ever was.
I watched this the other day.
It's phenomenal. Flawless. It's
Even
a
today,
flawless match.
if this match was happened today, it stands up. It's these two are the
that is the bar as far as I'm concerned. That is the level you must perform at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. To me, that's one of the greatest matches of all time.
It's just those two workers.
Yeah.
At the top of their game.
Oh yeah, totally. Savage was a great worker.
Savage is amazing. I love Macho Man.
I don't think I've never seen Savage in a bad match.
There's a few, but it's usually his opponent that he drags down. He's one of those wrestlers I always think that when he works with somebody he wants to work with and it's good, he's amazing.
Oh, he can be lazy. But I mean, WCW, he had some atrocious matches.
Yes.
And WWE, he had pretty good fucking matches.
Oh yeah. Standard was amazing. He wanted to be there though.
Him and Hogan was a great match.
Yeah, but it's because he wanted to be there.
And he worked his ass off.
Yeah. But later on he got lazy, and I think there's some terrible matches down the line. But that match to me is a WrestleMania standard.
As a main event match, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And I think I honestly think that match is what drives someone like Shawn Michaels to do the matches that he did at WrestleMania to get that WrestleMania moment.
I mean, it's Chris Jericho's favourite match.
Do you know what? It's funny you mention that because I was going to reference in relation to that Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 19.
Something like that.
I think it's 19.
Was that?
No, I was at 25.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Shawn Michaels, I think it's 19. I think it definitely is. Shawn Michaels, Chris Jericho at WrestleMania. That match is on par with that, and it's such a fucking astounding match.
Oh, it's a great match.
And again, it's those two amazing workers doing what they do best. I love that match. And that's why that one is so important to me. That's one of the first matches.
Totally agree. That's one. If I have to think of matches, the top 5 matches, that'll be on it.
Yeah. So this one's an odd one, right? Because it's not. It's from a Saturday night main event in May 1989. So it's just a odd one. But it's Hulk Hogan versus Big Boss Man in a steel cage.
Yeah.
And this is where it's a proper steel cage. It wasn't the sort of the mesh. It was the blue bar steel cage. And the match is pretty good. I mean, it's a solid match.
Yeah.
But it stands out to me because it's one of the first steel cage matches from 1989. So it's one of the first steel cage matches I've seen. I loved Boss Man.
Yeah.
I loved Hogan.
Boss Man was great.
And the ending of this match includes, and this is why I'm amazed by it, right? It includes Boss Man climbs out and he's climbing down, right? He's beaten down Hogan. Hogan gets up, sees that Boss Man is climbing out the cage, and he gets up and he runs up to the ring. he strangles. This is another thing about his heel moves. He throttles Bossman through the cage, and then begins to lift him back to the top of the cage.
Yeah.
So he hasn't touched the floor yet. Gets him and then superplexes him
Yes,
over the top of the cage, off the top rope.
Yeah, no, it was a great.
And
match.
I was watching this again the other day, and I'm thinking, Hogan just superplexed Bossman over the top of a steel cage.
Yeah, it was Ray Taylor's idea, by the way.
Was it?
Yes, it was. It was.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Because Hogan said, "Are you sure, brother?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Trust me." He said, "I used to do this in Smoky Mountain." So,
I'm sure he did. And that's the
Yeah.
thing about, like, you look at Bossman, and we talk about, Haystacks or these bigger guys. Now, when you see Bossman, he didn't look like he was in great shape. Let's be honest. He had a gut, and that, but he could work.
I see him as Bam Bam though. He's
Oh,
like a
Bam Bam, yeah,
a great worker.
yeah. Bam Bam Bigelow was amazing.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's the thing about this era is they weren't cut. There were less abs.
Yeah,
in
they
those
weren't body
days.
donors. They were,
Hard workers.
they were gimmicks.
Yeah,
They played their gimmick.
There were less
And
abs
They were
in those
so
days,
good
but-
at their gimmick.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if they had muscles.
no, it didn't. It
You know
really
what I mean?
didn't.
I mean, look at Savage. Savage wasn't that muscular.
He was
Really,
he wasn't
think about it.
ripped.
No, not
But
really. He did become a little bit more ripped.
Later on,
Yeah.
but during the 80s, like you say, it wasn't that important. They were all
No.
built.
Ted DiBiase.
Yeah,
You know.
it was more of a thing about they could work and they could work a crowd, and that was
Yeah.
the thing I love about it is they could really work a crowd. But I think the things we haven't touched on, and we will in the next show, is tag teams, because there's a couple of tag teams I really want to talk about.
Okay.
I've got some other things here. We want to. I want to go back and want to talk more about Jake the Snake.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Because
'Cause
we've both.
Well, I've never met him. You have. I've never met
Oh,
him.
you know.
I wasn't there. I wasn't there when you met Jake.
So I might have to tell a few
Yeah.
stories, maybe.
And I also want to then talk about really the end of the 80s and the transition to the 90s, and how it all sort of got a bit silly for WWF in those early 90s years. But yeah, I think that's the next show. Really, he's going to be us talking about, because the other thing we're going to do in the next show is we are going to be providing a bit of a review of a wrestling movie. Now, we did one for Patreon.
Yeah.
What I would say is the Oscar-worthy, no holds barred, brother. No, the film was a load of dookie.
Oscar spelt with a H.
Yeah, yeah. But the review was really good fun.
Yeah,
and if you want to hear that review, subscribe to our Patreon. But we are going to go see Walk Like a Panther.
And this is going to be a very personal film for us.
I think it is, and it's going to have a lot of sort of touchstones for us. And we're going to provide a review of this, and we're going to talk more about the British wrestling scene, and we'll talk more about 80s and early 90s wrestling. These people.
Sounds good.
So, what do you say, brother? Let's get ourselves down to the cinema.
Ooh, yeah!
I was hoping you'd go to a Warrior one. We're gonna go to the gods of... that's what we're going to talk about. We'll talk about 80s promos as well.
Maybe we should get a few Warrior promos just written out so we know exactly what we're saying.
Nothing. No one could transcribe a Warrior promo.
Oh, bless him. Yeah.
I loved them.
Yeah.
All right, but we will. That's the thing we'll talk about is 80s promos.
We're gonna get in the car. We're gonna get in the car, and the power of the Warriors is gonna be coming down on us as we go, and the popcorn will go from Mount Elliptus. Mount Elliptus will erupt in the veins of our ass. Refrigerator, corn dog, corned beef. And he used to watch it and go, yeah, what he said. I don't care. You're the Warrior. You can say what you like.
I love the fact that he would end it towards it. I mean, yeah, start snorting and growling, and you're like, oh, you're done then. Oh, all right. Match begins.
One of the nicest men that ever lived. Gotta say, God bless him.
So, and there is one thing we will touch on when we talk about promos. I want to talk about 80s promos in it, because you can't talk about 80s promos without the one and the only Mean Gene Oakland.
All right, everybody.
Yeah, because he was...
Standing with me now.
He was the sucker for all of this.
He was...
Well, Mean Gene, I'll tell you what. I'm going to get myself down to that ring, and I'm going to teach them a lesson, because I've been saying my prayers. I've been taking my vitamins.
And you just Mean Gene's like, yeah, you go, Hulkster.
Yeah, and Bobby Heenan.
Bobby Heenan. Oh, managers. We need to talk about managers.
We do it. That's a separate one. It's got to be a separate one.
So that's it. Okay,
Yeah.
so this has been a beautiful one. This has been
That's been nice. It's flown, isn't it?
It has.
It's an
So
hour.
it is. We'll wrap this up. So
Yeah.
I'll wrap it up
Can I-
with the usual things.
Can I get dressed now?
You can put on your pants. That's all I'm
Okay.
gonna let you do.
All right.
Cool.
Cool.
But I'll tell you. So thank
Can
you
I
very.
sit in the back row in the cinema with you while the plane is driving down into the ground.
I'm a little
The
scared.
power of the warriors.
Right, put your warrior back in the box.
We live forever.
But thank you very much for listening and putting up with Mike's nonsense.
Right.
Please find us on the social medias. We're on Twitter at 20th Century Geek. We're on Facebook. We're on Tumblr. I'm on Instagram. I do some fantastic pictures on
Tinder.
there. Tinder, yeah.
Grinder.
I'm available for all these things.
Bar mitzvahs.
That's it, yeah.
Children's birthday parties.
If you want to have feedback, please contact me on any of those platforms or email me at 20thcenturygeek@gmail.com.
Boom.
And if you want more of us, we have now started to do our Patreon things have started to be sent out. Please check them out and please subscribe. It'll be fantastic. And reviews on iTunes are also really appreciated. But until the next time.
You can also reach him on 07.
No! Okay then. Well, I'll say this right now.
7.
Let's go, brother!